In the previous part, we talked about upgrading from older Strimzi version to Strimzi 049. The upgrade has just completed and my cluster is now up to date and ready. But because we just upgraded, we are still using the old V1 Beta 2 APIs. And these contain a lot of deprecated fields which are not supported in the new V1 API. Some of the fields are deprecated for a very long time, but some of them are new and contain the latest changes which we implemented in 049. The easiest way to see the various deprecated fields is by checking the log of the cluster operator, where you can see all these warning messages about some deprecated fields which are right now in my resources. You can see that there are some reconciliation interval configurations deprecated, there are resources deprecated, uh, and so on. These warnings are also in the warning conditions in the custom resources themselves. So what we have to do now is we have to convert all of these resources to the new V1 API. You don't have to do that immediately. The V1 Beta 2 API will be supported together with the V1 API for another 2 releases. So you can keep using it as long as you use Strimzi 049, 050, or 051. The next version after 051 is currently expected to be the Strimzi 1.0 release, which will then support only the V1 API. So latest before upgrading to the 1.0 version, you will need to update all your custom resources. Now, you can of course do it manually, and for some of the deprecated fields, you will have to do it manually. But for a lot of the other changes, we prepared an API conversion tool, which is very similar to the one we used when we migrated from the V1 Beta 1 APIs to the V1 Beta 2 APIs a few years back. So I have it ready here as well. And it contains similar options as before. You can convert files with your resources. You can convert the resources directly in your Kubernetes cluster. And then finally, at the end, it will help you with upgrading the actual CRDs. Now, let's have a look at how can we update the resources directly in our Kubernetes cluster. For that, we can use the command convert resources, which can have various options. For example, you can convert the resources only in some namespace or in all namespaces, which is the default variant. You can also convert only some kinds of the Strimzi resources, so for example, only the Kafka clusters. But by default, it will always convert everything. So let's try to do that. And the first thing it told us is that it failed to convert the Kafka resource because in the resource configuration, we have the field .spec.kafka.resources, which is removed in the V1 API, but cannot be converted automatically. This is one of the several fields which are deprecated in the old API and are not supported in the new API, but which are not really feasible to convert them automatically. Because in this case, you should remove the resource configuration from the Kafka custom resource and add it to the Kafka node pool resources. So what we have to do is we have to update this manually. So I can do kubectl edit Kafka my cluster. I can find the resource fields, which is here. I can just delete it. And in my case, I already have the proper resources configuration in the Kafka node pools, so I don't have to go there and add the resource configuration there. But if you don't have it there in your cluster, then you should fix that as well. And now, because I fixed the manual problem, I can try to run the conversion tool again. And this time, it didn't found any problems which need to be handled manually and found only things which can be converted automatically and automatically did these conversions. So when I get back to my pod, and when I once again check the log from the cluster operator, you can see that there are no warnings about the deprecated fields anymore. So all the resources were converted and we are ready for the next steps. However, it is pretty common that you manage your custom resources in files and then push them into some Git repository and then, for example, use the GitOps tooling such as Argo or Flux to apply those to your cluster. That's why the conversion tool can also convert your files. For example, here locally I have a file with definition of my Kafka Connect cluster, which contains some deprecated fields, or I have a HTTP bridge configuration, which is using, again, some deprecated fields, such as the old metric configuration. So again, I can use the conversion tool. And this time I can use the convert file option. I will start with the connect file, and you can have the output redirected to a new YAML file which you will use. You can have it redirected to standard output and copy it from there. Or you can also use the so-called in-place update, where it will directly update the file you are using. And that's it. The file is now converted. Let's do the same for the bridge file. And the bridge file is now converted as well. Now, because I have these files in my Git repository, I can now do just git diff, and I will see the differences in these files. So here in the bridge file, we can see that there is the user definition, which didn't have anything deprecated. So the only changed thing is the API version for the user. The API version is changed for the Kafka bridge as well, but it was also using the deprecated enable metrics flag, which is replaced by this new metrics configuration. So the conversion tool automatically changed that and automatically added the config map with the corresponding metric exporter rules to the YAML as well. Similarly, for the connect file, you can see that the user, again, the only change here is the API version. But for connect, it, for example, automatically added these definitions for the group ID and the config, status, and offset topics, which are required in the V1 version. So the conversion looks good. These are now valid V1 resources. And all I need to do is commit them to my Git repository, open a PR, merge it, and then wait for my GitOps tooling to apply these changes in my cluster. So that's how you can convert your files. In the next part, we will have a look at how the upgrade to Streamzy 1.0 will look like.